Good morning. Thanks for joining me for this month's SLICE webinar. By popular demand of the Strategic Leader program, we're talking about marketing this month. And so this will be a little slice of the work that we're going to do in the Strategic Leader program, which is tomorrow. If any of you are also registered for the Strategic Leader program, tomorrow's is going to be much more in depth, and we'll also have open discussion and Q&A. So that will be a good one to join. But today we're going to, because most of you on the call are new to Phimation, I'm going to talk a little bit about my background and why strategy is important. I didn't update this slide from last month. Last month we talked about budgeting. This month we're going to talk about marketing, and then I'll also talk about the starter kit that's available if you want to participate tomorrow in the marketing webinar and talk in more depth. For those of you who aren't familiar with Phimation, phi is the ratio of spirals, and Phimation is the universe's natural process of growth. If you think about how a spiral works, it enables both creativity and growth, and also structure and function. And so it's very apropos for the work that we do here at Phimation and the growth that our clients experience. My background, I usually am playing in the COO space or the board of directors space. I work with boards, I work with C teams, leadership teams of vice presidents, and then also management teams with middle managers. And but much of my work is in the CEO and board of directors. At this point, I have had probably close to 2,500, maybe even 3,000 strategy meetings. All of the work that I've done over the last 10 years in strategy has been developing the thoughts to where I am now. And so there's a lot of R&D that I'm able to share because of the other work that I've done with my clients and the investments that my clients have made. And right now I have 20 active clients that I'm working with. Some of them are in great depth and almost like I'm on the management team, and others are more of just a monthly coaching call. I am focused on second stage companies, those that are out of startup and are growing generally in the $3 to $50 million range, well, $1 to $50 million range, and a bulk of my clients are around 5 to 15 million. I want to talk a little bit about strategy before we get into marketing. Strategy is really about choosing, which of course means that it's about decisions. And a decision, if you want to deconstruct it, is made up of two things. It's made up of options and then criteria. And so options for what the choices are that you could select, and then the criteria for how to evaluate those and select them. And one of the interesting things that's happening societally is that all three of these elements of this decision equation are getting more complicated. So disruption means that things that we used to be able to take for granted, we no longer can take for granted. So we now have more decisions to make. We have abundance with unlimited bandwidth, unlimited memory, abundant technology. So we have more options than ever, and there is more uncertainty than ever. And all of my clients are dealing with, not really being able to predict beyond 3 or 6 months. And so that's meaning that there's more criteria that's potentially going into the evaluation. As a result of that, there's just a need for more strategy, a need for more discipline in our decision making than there ever has been before. So that is the broad societal shift that's happening. There's also some shifts that are happening inside your company that mean that you may need a different approach to strategy. And this is a grid. On the y-axis is how familiar the environment is Highly familiar is down low, and new and uncertain is up high on that. And then on the x-axis, there's the complexity of the decision that needs to be made and the complexity of the situation, and low on the left-hand side and high complexity on the right-hand side. If you're dealing with transitions, accelerations, changed markets, new markets, anything new, you're dealing in an environment that is not very familiar to you and can be highly complex. And if you are operating in that space, well, actually, I'll tell you what to do in a second, but the other thing that's going on based on what I just showed you with that decision formula is that the new normal is much more unfamiliar and much more complex than the good old days. And so so we're having to make decisions that are harder decisions to make than we ever have before. If you're thinking about how you're making the decision, if you're in a familiar environment and a not very complicated decision, then you can use your intuition. You probably have internalized the various influences and decision and factors that you have to take into account, and you can make a gut call. The problem is that more and more we're operating in the upper right-hand quadrant of this graph, and that requires a structured process. It requires a structured process to say, what is the decision we're making? What are the options that we have, and how do we create more options, because we're only as good as our best option. So how do we create more so we can get a better option to choose? And then what are our evaluation criteria? How do we get clear on what's going to drive this decision? You don't have to get overly complicated to have a structured process, but it will make a huge difference in the quality of your decisions if you're operating in that upper quadrant. And that, of course, is what Phimation is focused on, and that's part of what we'll be talking about today, and as this relates to marketing. So let's take a look at a slice of marketing. First of all, the marketing and sales landscape is really a jungle. You have on the bulk there, the big almost paragraph that you're looking, you have awareness content, strategic partnerships, social media. Even within social media, then you could break it down to Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. Up there's telemarketing, collateral, direct mail. All these things are potential places where you could invest dollars. Moving down, you get into email campaigns, webinars, workshops, things like that. And then at the bottom of the list there, you get into sales things, sales process, inside sales, key account management. This is the landscape of the options that you have for marketing. And just about every client and prospect that I talk to that looks at this says, yeah, I can see why I'm overwhelmed. There's just so much to be looking at and thinking about, and it's very hard to decide where to put your attention. You have the, in the vertical text on either side of all those things, you have the functions that you need to manage, CRM to manage sales, and marketing automation to manage the marketing activities. And then, of course, the planning and management functions on the right. Strategy stuff is up above with targets, value, offerings, and positioning. Sometimes I talk to people and they're about to put money into a PR campaign, and really where their money needs to go is toward targeting or understanding their value or their offerings. So really everything on this page is a potential for investing your time and energy. So given that overwhelming amount of possibility, how do we start to take that apart and say, where can we start? How can we make a decision that feels like it's right for starting to get into all of this jungle and starting to use these things to our advantage instead of being overwhelmed by them? Because we know we need to do something in marketing, but we're just not sure what it is. And I have found that this funnel is very helpful as we then try to evaluate the options. So I'm going to show you a few slides here and show you how it applies. If you're not familiar with it, a general decision-making or purchase process goes through several steps. First, you're unaware that you want to buy something or unaware of the options. Then you become aware that you have a problem or something that you want to buy, and you become aware of what the choices are in addressing that purchase that you want to make. But you're only at that point aware. You're not really kind of doing much about it. And then it rises in importance, and so it becomes something that you're interested in. You might go online and do some research or start to get into that decision. And then after you've learned some about it, now you have a desire to actually address the issue. And then you make a commitment, okay, I don't just want to, I'm actually going to, and then you make the purchase. You can go through this very quickly if you're standing in the line of a checkout counter in a grocery store and decide that you want to buy something that they have dangled in front of you there while you're checking out, or it can be a more elaborate and long process if you're thinking about moving to a new house or buying a new car. But a decision goes through this process all the time. And so our job in marketing and sales is to move to both push in a supportive way and to react to prospects who are moving through this funnel. So there's a few things about this funnel. First of all, you can divide it in half, and really, ideally, you would be handling the top part of the funnel with marketing. And marketing is one-to-many activities. So I'm going to write a blog post once, and then I'm going to post it online, and 20 people are going to see it, or 200 people are going to see it, or 2,000 people are going to see it. But marketing is really about one-to-many. Many stage 2 companies, so in startup, you really don't have much marketing generally. And many stage 2 companies are still trying to handle the whole funnel with labor, with their salespeople calling up, cold calling people and doing things like that. That is a very inefficient way, and you just can't afford to do that in today's environment. So with marketing, you want to do one-to-many, and the point of that is about educating. People don't know what their problem is, and you just want to educate them about what their problem is. You don't want to be selling at that point. Ideally, your sales team would only deal with people who have crossed over the line from being interested to having a desire to do something. If you show this to a salesperson and say, from now on, you're only going to have to deal with people that already have a desire to buy from us, they would be in heaven. Right? They love this idea that they would be only dealing with people that are kind of ready to buy. And that is the opportunity, is that marketing creates these qualified, interested leads, and then sales can follow up. They're much more efficient and much more effective. Sales then is a one-to-one activity, and the primary activity within that is listening. At this point, the customer is educated. They should know, if they've come down the funnel because of things that you've done, they should know what you're offering, how you offer it. Now it's just about being present with them and understanding their needs and responding to them. So that's a very useful background, but we have to figure out, how do we apply this funnel to all those things that we could spend money on? And I think the key to that is the numbers on the left-hand side of the funnel here. So if you are, when I talk to people, almost universally, down at the bottom of the funnel, when they're doing proposals, they usually have somewhere between a 30% and an 80% success rate with their proposals. So I just put 50%, but depending on how tightly you manage what proposals you write and what quotations you put out, it's usually between 30 and 80%. So a ballpark is 50% of the time you're successful in your proposals. In the middle of the funnel, for those of you who have email campaigns, you'll know that usually the open rate of an email campaign is somewhere between 10 and 30%, kind of approximately 20%. So in the middle of the funnel, your success rate is around 20%. And then we're all pretty familiar with direct mail response rates, Facebook click rates, things like that, usually between 1% and 3%. So I put around 2%. So if you have not been actively managing your marketing and sales funnel, the place to start is at the bottom of the funnel, where you're going to have the highest hit rate. Because if I can improve the sales that I'm doing, I can move something. It's going to have an impact on 50% and a high probability activity that I'm doing. Once my sales is optimized, then I want to move to the middle of the funnel, which are things like, it's basically communicating with people that already know you and already like you. So it's getting an email list, creating an ongoing newsletter educational campaign for that email list, having some webinars, workshops, ways that people already know you can take a step in and get to know you better and learn about the kinds of things that the kinds of issues they may have in their business and the kinds of help that you can provide. Only after you've done sales optimization there and middle of the funnel activity, only after you've got all that done, then you should look at top of the funnel stuff. You could think about social media, you can do more outreach. Now, all of my clients go to trade shows and do some kind of thing at the top of the funnel already, but usually they're worried that that's not enough or they should be doing more or whatever. This funnel says, don't worry about that. Just release all of that. There's probably much more impactful things that you can do that are closer to the sale that you're making and the people that you already know. So that doesn't completely solve. So do I do an email campaign or a webinar? Do I invest in key account management or sales behaviors, sales training? But it takes the top of the funnel is where the most options of spending your money are, and it largely takes that off the table. And I found that when I talk to stage 2 leaders, they're able to pretty quickly know how they would spend their money in the bottom or the middle of the funnel. It's the top of the funnel that really confuses them. And so by taking the top, here's a good rationale for taking the top of the funnel out of the equation, and then focus on the areas that you know that can drive your business. So does anybody have, there's a question function there, and if anybody has any questions, you are welcome to type them in. I'll tell you, well, we're waiting to see if anybody types anything. Tomorrow, we will be in the Strategic Leader Program, which is a executive education and coaching program. We will be talking about marketing. I will lay out what I just laid out and then go into more depth about the various options. And also, there's a significant part of that that's coaching. And so if you had questions about, do I spend it on this or that, so if we're talking about the middle of the funnel, what does that look like? How would I go about developing an email campaign? How would I go about developing webinars, and how would I come together with a plan? We'll be getting into all of that tomorrow. No questions are coming through, so let me just finish with an explanation of what this $100 starter kit is. The Stage 2 Owner's Manual has a, actually I did get a question. All right, so where does branding or brand development fit in? Great question. So the textbook answer is that unless you have a clear brand and a compelling brand for your market, you really, all the things that come after that are less effective, which I agree with. Usually if you're a second stage company, you have a good enough brand. I would say 5% of the second stage companies that I come across have a really great brand, but 90% of the second stage companies I come across are successful businesses. So on the one hand, developing a brand is important and it can make a significant difference, especially if you're in a competitive market or you have some kind of change going on in your business. That's where branding, I think, is especially important to look at. But if you're kind of going along and your brand hasn't been getting you in trouble before this point, then I would say the money would probably be better spent improving how you're doing outreach to the marketplace. All of these areas, CRM and having systems that make you effective, having sales training, all those things are helpful. And the question is, well, which one is going to be the most helpful, because that's what I'm going to put my money into. So if you're going through a transition, especially, I would recommend that you look at your brand and you do some brand work and brand development. Or if you're facing a more competitive marketplace where you have to get clearer, you have to, or I guess the last one would be if you're going into a new market. Those are times when, to me, the brand development rises above the other things that usually would, and it's worthwhile to spend time on it. Otherwise, if you're good enough, then it's not a great answer because textbook says you should do it, but we live in a world of limited resources, and sometimes there's just not the resources to do it, and you get more bang for the buck by creating an email newsletter that you didn't have, or going to a trade show that otherwise you wouldn't be able to afford. So I tend to go toward more tactical kind of market outreach things unless I was in a situation where I needed to look at the brand. Good question. I got another one. All right, if we take the top of the funnel out of the equation, won't the middle and bottom of the funnel run dry? That's the interesting thing. You always say the best customers, best prospects that you have are the customers that you already have. So that's kind of true to the extent that you don't have additional opportunity that you can sell within your let's call the middle of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel the people that are in your ecosystem. Let's call them your tribe. If you've already optimized all the things that you can sell to your tribe by expanding your offering, by going deeper, then that would be true. But there's no company that I've run across where that's been the case. Generally, if they haven't had this kind of framework in mind to think about how do we sell to people that we already know, there's a lot of opportunity lying in their email database and their existing customers. But it's a good point. And I guess most of the clients that I deal with are unwilling to give that top of the funnel up completely. I think it's usually they have some kind of activity that they've used successfully and they've done well, and so they continue to do that. It's not that it's completely abandoned, it's just that they can release the idea that they need to do more. And the most typical thing that I see over and over is that they have the trade shows that they go to, and those are useful and important. And so I'm not advocating stopping going to those trade shows. I'm just saying that for incremental dollars and for additional attention, I wouldn't worry about the top of the funnel. But I would. So the other thing that I also do is with middle of the funnel, that's usually a 12 to 18 month development cycle. And then all of that work that you do in the middle of the funnel is applicable at the top of the funnel. It actually is the start of what you need to be successful at the top of the funnel. So it's 12 to 18 months kind of out of the market, or not as intensely in the market. And then you have a whole arsenal of stuff that you have to work with to go after the top of the funnel. And you can really go after it in a much more significant and dramatic way. Great question, though. All right, so let me wrap up by talking about the starter kit. The owner's manual has 12 different chapters. One of them is on marketing, one's on sales, also trends and leadership and talent and productivity. There's a whole range of things that as a leader you need to know about in the different areas that you can spend that you can work on in your business. So that is kind of like a workbook of the toolkit that I've used from the consulting that I've done with my clients. There is also a strategy toolkit that has 15 templates and decision grids. So you remember that familiarity by complexity grid that we talked about. I have about a dozen of those that really help to understand if you have to make a decision about people or customers or market. There's a whole bunch of different areas that those cover. It also has a template for a personal development plan, for a blog worksheet if you wanted to start blogging and you're not sure where to start. So that's kind of really practical kit. The Strategic Leader Program is for executives, and again, it's a combination of me providing some content from the consulting that I do, and then also working on the individual coaching for people that have questions. And then the last is the Rising Leader Program, which is for your middle managers who who almost universally in second stage companies are underinvested in and underdeveloped, and that is a monthly webinar where I present something like what we looked at today, and then I'll do Q&A with those managers, and we get into the challenges that they have as young managers, as rising managers, as people that are just below the vice president level, and really have a lot to deal with both getting work done and trying to make progress on the strategic initiatives that you've identified. Both of those are monthly webinars with the coaching built in, and the starter kit includes 3 months, so you can give it a try. It also includes all of the archives, so a lot of these topics we've already covered, and every month I put it up to a vote of the people on the call what they want to talk about, which is why we got to marketing this month. So thank you again for joining me today. If you have an interest in joining tomorrow or getting the recording tomorrow, you see Allison's contact information there at the bottom of the screen. You can email her at Allison with 2 L's at Phimation.com, or her phone number is there, and I'll leave it up for a minute. Even if you can't make it, it's recorded. You get the slides. I also do a quick summary so that if it's a topic that you don't need to use now, you can put it into your email archives, and when you need it, you can pull it up and very quickly get a feeling for how you might need to handle it. So thanks for joining us. I don't know what next month's slice is going to be about. We'll see what the group chooses. I do think that we're getting into the time of year where people do performance reviews, and we also are getting into the time of the year where we need to set up dashboards for gauging performance of the team or the company as a whole. So those are my 2 leading potential topics for next month, but I'll see where the group takes us. Hope you have a good month, good holidays, and thanks again for joining me today. Bye-bye.